Welcome back, everyone. Yet another episode of ZNotes Live ICSE Physics. So today we're going to be diving into motors, generators, and transformers. We'll start by understanding what it means. What is electromagnetic induction? What's Lenz's law? And then we'll sort of go into the more applied aspects of this, which is with transformers, power losses, and with DC motors. We've got a lot to cover, and we've also got Kaleem here. Awesome. Let's get started.
Thanks, Pugs. Guys, yes, this is going to take quite a while, actually. You get motors, generators, and transformers. And probably today we'll get electromagnetic induction done and probably at least touch on generators. Then next week we'll continue on. But this will take a couple of lessons indeed. And one of these tends to come up in exams very, very often. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's unpack the topic. First things first, what is electromagnetic induction? Look how geeky and hard and difficult that terminology sounds. Basically, you can, let's keep it simple, create electricity, if you like. It's not a term that we would use in the exam, by simply moving a wire through a magnet. And the chances are that unless you're a little millennial, which some of you might be, in fact, most of you will be, you've actually probably done this without realizing that you've done this. Maybe you've ridden a bicycle that has a light on it, and that light will only light up when you pedal. Maybe you've had a yo-yo that when you move the yo-yo up and down, it only lights up when you move. Maybe you or your little brothers and sisters have got little trainers that light up when they walk. Maybe you've had a little toy gun as a kid and it's got no batteries, but every time you fire it, there's a little red light at the side. I don't even know if they still have those anymore, that lights up. Trying to think of more. Maybe you've seen these science type videos where you've got a hamster that's running around a wheel and it lights up a light bulb. These are all examples of electromagnetic induction. Maybe you have had a torch that when you push the handle, the torch lights up. What's going on here? Well, basically, in its simplest sense, a wire is cutting a magnetic field. What? Okay, so let's get into it. So here we should know that magnetic fields go from north to south. And let's say I've got a conductor, any conducting wire. Now, this wire is very unlikely. In fact, it's not likely at all. It's unlikely to be magnetic. In other words, for you at IGCSE, it's not steel and it's not iron. All right, it's a conductor, very likely to be copper, but not magnetic. You take that wire, you cut the magnetic field at 90 degrees, you get current. You stop moving that wire, you get nothing. Move it in the other direction, you will get current in the other direction. Stop moving that wire, you get nothing. Why do I keep saying that? Because later when we get into AC generators, alternating current, the generator itself, you will learn that it cannot work unless it's being moved constantly. It cannot work unless there is AC. All right, a DC generator won't work. DC motor, you are going to see later, has a very similar structure to a generator. This is not the AC generator itself, but the principles on which it works is completely reversed. What you're going to learn is when it comes to a generator, it's always kinetic to electrical. And when it comes to a motor, it's always electrical to kinetic. That later, more on that later on, it will make sense. So this effect was discovered by Michael Faraday way back in 1831. So have a look at this. Sorry, should I put the magnetic field on first? So if I move the wire down, notice I get a voltage and it goes to 0. Move it up, voltage in the other direction, and then it goes to 0. But if I now try to move it up and down, notice what happens to the needle. It is alternating. Okay? So, how can you make current or voltage bigger? EMF, as it's called. See, a long time ago, somebody's figured out that when you move a wire through a magnetic field, you can induce a current or you can induce an EMF. In other words, create voltage, create current. But how do you make it as big as possible? Well, again, other geniuses figured out, move it faster. Take the wire and move it faster and faster through the magnetic field. Notice it's cutting the magnetic field at 90 degrees. Or have more wire inside the magnetic field itself. So have more wire cutting the coil. And last but not least, having a stronger magnet. So guys, by simply having a stronger magnet, having more wire, in other words, wrapping it like a coil of wire, a solenoid, and moving it really, really quickly, you can increase the current or the induced EMF. So here's an electromagnetic induction experiment. So here what's going to happen is, instead of moving the wire through the magnet, we're going to move the magnet through the wire. And I want you to understand, potato, potato, it's the exact same thing. So watch what happens. Move magnet in, voltage goes one way, stop, get nothing. Move magnet out, voltage goes other way, stop, get nothing. I need to keep, cutting the coil or the magnetic field in order to get an alternating current or an alternating voltage. Okay? Right. So what have we done so far? You've learned, and you're being asked to accept, that by the simple act of moving a wire through a magnet or a magnet through a wire, a coil of wire, whatever, you are going to induce a current or induce an EMF. All right? In other words, we're generating electricity. Kinetic to electrical. Lenz's law. Lenz's law will come up a lot later, in depth, but right now I need you to understand Lenz's law. See, what you're going to learn later, and I'm now going to do it now because it's a chicken and egg situation. When you move a wire through a magnet, you get a current in that wire. What you're also going to learn later when we do DC motors is that when there's current in a wire, there's also a magnetic field around that wire. So let me say that again. If I take a wire and I move it through a magnet, I get current. The moment I get current, I get a magnetic field. What? Exactly. Guys, I need you to accept it right now. That's what I'd like you to do. And then by the end, there'll be a bit more clarity. The thing is, nobody's going to explain to you at GCSE why that happens. You just need to know that it does happen. Now, here's the key point. See, when you do simple magnetism, you're taught about magnetic materials like iron and steel. Yes, there are others, but those are the two main ones. A wire inside a circuit is very unlikely to be iron or steel. It's likely to be copper. So am I saying copper becomes magnetic when there's current through it? Yes. Any current carrying wire has a magnetic field around that wire. Whoa, what the hell is going on here? Exactly. All right. So what am I asking you to accept right now? Take a wire, a conducting wire, move it through a magnet, you get current. As soon as you get current in that wire, you've got a magnetic field around that wire. If it's a single wire, the magnetic field looks like a bunch of circles around the wire. If that wire is wrapped into something known as a solenoid, basically what you get is a magnetic field that looks like a bar magnet. So what the hell has Lenz's law got to do with it? The direction of the induced current tries to stop the movement that made it. What does that mean? Now, guys, I don't know if any of you back home here have got a cat. All right, I don't have one myself, but I've got friends that have cats. And if you know anything about the behavior of a cat, when you don't pay attention, it will come up to you, it'll rub up against your leg, it'll want attention. It'll just want your attention, it'll do what it can to attract your attention. The moment you give the cat attention, what does it do? It buggers off. It runs away. This is very, very similar to Lenz's law. All right. So if I take this magnet and move it into this coil, I already know that I'm going to get current. Now, here's the thing. Now what I'm saying to you is when you get current in that wire, you've got a magnetic field around that wire. What does the magnetic field look like for a solenoid? Bar magnet. What does it try to do? Oppose the change causing it. So when you move the magnet into the coil with the North Pole, you'll feel a force trying to repel it. You try to push the magnet in with the North Pole, you will feel a force trying to repel it. In other words, you've got a North Pole here trying to push that North Pole out. If you try to push in with the South, instead of that being a North, it would be South. Okay, it would totally be South. Now, this could be quite a controversial analogy. Took me a long time to learn. But you know, when you're 16, your kind of age, and like I said, this could be controversial. And you know, you're learning about the opposite sex, okay? And when you're learning about the opposite sex, if you ever find yourself liking someone, and boys, this is definitely for you guys, and you know, you like someone and you start calling them, and you start calling them often, guess what? In our male logical heads, that should mean that we get called back often. It does not happen. So when you call often, right, you don't get called back. You stop calling, you'll get called back. This is the best way that I can describe Lenz's law. When you try to do something, it opposes the change causing it. Pugs, I don't know if you want to speak or...
I want to testify to the fact that it's true. I mean, Lenz's law.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Lenz's law is true. Okay, so teeny boppers, the quicker you learn this, all right, you'll be more successful. So here's the weird thing. When I pull that magnet out, so this is me not calling anymore, all right? So when I pull that magnet out, forget the thumb part. Don't worry about the thumb. I'll deal with that later. But when I pull the magnet out, so this is me not calling, the weirdest thing happens. I get a phone call. Or nowadays, it's text messaging. So the point is, with Lenz's law, guys, the physics part of this is, when you try to push the magnet into the coil, we will induce a current. The moment we do that, we've got a magnetic field. The magnetic field around the solenoid is like a bar magnet, and it will try to oppose what you do. So if you try to push it in, it will push it out. If you try to pull it out, it will try to pull it in. So if I push in with the North Pole, it will repel with the North. If I try to push in with the South Pole, it will repel with the South. If I try to pull out with the North, it will attract with the South. And if I try to pull out with the South, it will attract with the North. The whole point is it will do the opposite. So what Lenz's law, if we go back to it, says, without my controversial analogies, the direction of the induced current tries to oppose the movement that caused it. It will do the complete opposite. And this is being tested more and more rather subtly. So let us now get into the AC generator. What does it look like? Now, you won't have a good idea. In fact, you know what? I'm going to move forward to move backwards so you can actually see a better diagram of what this looks like, and we'll explain the rest. This is a nice example of an AC generator. I'm going to show the magnetic field. I'm going to turn the labels on. So guys, I know this looks like one wire. It's not. It's actually a coil of wire. It's just a nice way to represent it. So it's a solenoid. All right, it's a solenoid. It's a coil of wire. And what's going to happen is, when I turn this generator on, it spins round and round and round and round. And if you look at the little light bulb at the side, it turns on and off. Now, this is super exaggerated. In reality, it's on the entire time, except for a tiny, minuscule split second when it's completely vertical, which I'll explain later. But right now, this is really, really exaggerated. So, and I'll explain why later. But what I want you to understand is, when you did general physics or when you did energy, you would have probably come across, you know, with a coal power station or a gas power station or a nuclear power station or an oil power station or hydroelectric or wind turbines, any of that kind of stuff. You'll always have come across the term generator. Well, this is a generator. How does it work? Turbine is connected to a generator. What the hell is a turbine? A big fan, right? So what happens? Well, when it's a wind turbine, the wind turns the turbine round and round and round. What's the turbine connected to? Generator. Generator turns round and round and round. What do we get? Electricity, kinetic to electrical. Coal, oil, gas, nuclear, or geothermal power station. What happens in there? The fuel heats up water. Water's turned into steam, very, very, very high energy gas. Turns a turbine. Oh, shock. What does the turbine do? Spin round and round and round and round. What's it connected to? Generator. What does a generator do? Generate electricity. So the point I'm trying to make is this thing here is connected to something that's going to spin it round and round and round. So let's look at it from a simple point of view. So here we've got our permanent magnet. You don't need to worry about this south pole or that north pole. Just look at the north to the south. You've got two slip rings. Why? Because one ring is going to be connected to one side of the coil and the other ring is going to be connected to the other. Why? Because if you didn't, you would have a short circuit. It would completely skip the coil. Electricity always wants to take the path of least resistance. So that's why we've got two rings. Why are they there? They allow the generator to spin round and round and round. So what are the carbon brushes for? Carbon, if you've done chemistry, is an excellent conductor and is also regarded as a lubricant. In other words, it doesn't have a lot of friction. So if you think about what you want to do with a generator is you want it to spin round and round and round. So the carbon conducts, it's touching the slip rings, which is connected to the coil. The coil is placed inside a magnetic field, and that's where our current is induced. That's where we get our voltage. And this siren here, like a light bulb, if you like, is going to light up. So here's an example of a power station. So what's happening in here? This could be coal, oil, gas, nuclear, geothermal. Let me just stop so you can hear me. I'll turn it back on, and just right at the end of the pipe there, you're going to see steam. Steam is going to turn a turbine. Turbine's connected to generator. Generator generates electricity. Steam turns back to water again, and the whole process repeats. Just have a look where my pointer is pointing very shortly. Right there. Spinning turbine, spinning generator, and the voltage is moving so fast that it just looks like it's staying at the top. But look, the needle's moving back and forth a little, indicating alternating current, or in this case, alternating voltage. Okay, so steam from the boiler turns the turbine, which spins the generator that produces electricity. In this slide, you're going to find an exaggeration of sorts. Let me put it on. What it looks like is the wire is only cutting through the magnetic field when it's moving up and down, which is true. And it's not cutting the magnetic field when I make it move right and I make it move left. You might be thinking, why would you deliberately do that? We're not going to deliberately do that. But what I want to explain to you is a coil of wire will do the exact same. Because when it spins round and round and round, when it's horizontal, it cuts the most magnetic field lines. And when it's vertical, it does no such thing for the slightest fraction of a second. Let me actually demonstrate this with my other camera. So just give me a second. I did have one going. Ah, there we go. Okay, and I'll probably have to do a new share here. Pugs, let me just see how I do that.
Okay.
Sorry guys, just 1 second so we can see how we And share screen. Here we go. Right. Guys, I hope you can see this in front of me now. So what I've got is I have totally exaggerated, forget the X's here right now. I've totally exaggerated a magnetic field. I've made it really curved at the top. But I did that so that I can illustrate to you what a coil of wire would be doing if it was spinning round and round and round. So I want you to imagine that my purple highlighter here is, we're looking at the coil of wire side on. Now, when it spins round and round and round, let's just focus on the lid. If it spins round and round and round, like you can see here, and I am exaggerating, it's cutting through the magnetic field lines. But see when it becomes vertical, where I mark the X's, watch very carefully. And like I said, this is exaggerated, but look at the lid. It's not cutting it. It's following it. And if it's following the magnetic field lines, we get no current. Now, please understand, that only really happens top and bottom. But to illustrate this point, I had to exaggerate it so you could understand why, when it's vertical, that you get no induced current or no induced voltage. Because for that tiny minuscule split second, it's not actually cutting the magnetic field. So even if I go up the top, like I said, it's exaggerated. Look, follow, 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 and now cuts. So like I said to you, please be clear, that's only happening here and here. But I hope that illustrates it. So why did we get the bright light only when it was horizontal? Because that's when it's cutting the maximum number of magnetic field lines. I hope that makes sense. So let me go back to our PowerPoint.
Yep.
Okay. So when I'm showing you this PowerPoint and it looks like we're deliberately missing the wire, I want you to understand that coil is either at the top, at the top and at the bottom at the same time. So what happens here? So cutting up the way, cutting the magnetic field, no cutting, cutting down, no cutting. Remember, the no cutting part is exaggerated. It's for illustrative purposes only. So what do we get? Let's give it letters, A, B, C, D. Well, quite clearly, A and C, you're going to have no current or voltage. But B and D, you're going to have current and voltage, but in opposite directions, because you cut it one way and then you cut it the other way. What does that look like? It looks like this: alternating current or alternating voltage. Think about it. If I don't cut, I get nothing. So why does a generator need to work on AC? It's because you need to keep cutting the magnetic field. And to do so, you must go backwards and forwards. You might get students who say, but sir, why don't we just make one that's so big that we don't need to go backwards and forwards? Think about it. Like humongously big. What, you want it to go from here to the sun and back again? Okay, just to power a country? That makes no sense. It would really, really, really have to be huge in order for that to work. So the whole point is you keep cutting it. What's the nicest way to do it? Go around the circle. Okay? So let's have a look at the AC generator experiment. Let's turn on the magnetic field. Guys, I hope you can see this. It's a green coil of wire, and there's a red dot in there. And the red dot is to guide us through what's happening as we turn a quarter turn, which is what I'm going to do. So quarter turn, the red dot's in there, cut maximum field lines, I get a voltage or a current. Half a turn, the red dot's in behind here, it's now vertical. Remember what I told you, the vertical part, for a split second, we get nothing because it's not cutting anything. Rotate it to 270, the red dot's now here, it's now cutting again the coil, maximum number in the opposite direction. And let's move it 360, it's back up towards the vertical. For a split second, it's not cutting anything. And let's play it. This is how a generator works. Spin it round and round and round and round, and you get alternating current or alternating voltage. Now, why do I keep saying both? Listen, you can chop and change between the exam. Pick one and stick to it. AC generator is known for its alternating current, but it also is known for inducing an EMF. In other words, voltage, electromotive force. Okay, now guys, this will be our last slide. This is going to be a nice premise to our next lesson, which is going to be transformers. Now, the slide itself is exaggerated, okay? But it's going to illustrate a very, very good point before you leave today. So we've got our generator, we've got our power station somewhere. I don't know how far from you, wherever you are, go and look it up. Where's your nearest power station? But what you'll have is in the field or the desert or wherever you are, there'll be these overhead cables that are traveling through fields that you know that are carrying electricity. Where are they carrying electricity from? The power station. Where are they carrying electricity to? You, the consumer, shopping malls, football stadiums, your house. So what's the big deal? Let's say I asked Pugs to go to the beach. Let's say I'm in a really luxurious place. I'm not, but if I was, and there was a beach 200 yards down the road, like, hey, Pugs, go and get me a bucket of water, please. Unbeknown to Pugs, I've stuck a hole in that bucket. Is he going to bring me back any water? Of course he's not. Guys, when we generate electricity, or when we generate power, if you like, in a power station, we've got to get that to the consumer, us, me and you. But here's the key. You don't want energy being lost by the time it gets to me and you, because that's a waste. Look, this might be beyond some of you. I don't know if you remember, but you can certainly ask your parents. You know, there was a time there was dial-up internet. And if you ask your parents what dial-up internet was like, you're just imagining a hamster running around a wheel just so you can log on to a website. Then there was DSL, which was better. But if you were far away from the telecommunications hub, like the main center, the further and further you got away, the crappier your internet became, because there was signal degradation. Your signal became weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. That's not fun. That's absolutely not fun when you get a friend that's boasting they're playing PlayStation, they've got no lagging when they're playing FIFA or whatever, all right, and you're at the end of it and your guy's like jittery. It's as if something's pausing. Then fiber optic came and changed the entire map, because fiber optic internet, as you've learned before, there is very, very little loss in signal. So what about electricity? Well, current causes heating, right? So, well, if we can minimize current and make voltage as big as possible, what will happen is we can keep power the same and lose very little heat. You what? I'll explain. If you're familiar with the desert, you know, the Middle East, the Arab people, a long, long time ago, would have camels. In fact, some of them still do, would have camels that carry their food, their belongings in caravans. They called them caravans, their families, as they were nomadic and they went from place to place to place. If you ask an Arab student, would your families or would their families make the camel run across the desert? They would look at you as if you were absolutely crazy. Of course you wouldn't. It's 50 plus degrees heat. Who'd want to run across the desert? The camel will die. But here's what you do. You load the camel with everything. High voltage. You make the camel walk across the desert nice and slowly. Small current. It's an analogy. I really don't want to, you know, the paper 4 happened the other day, and I had a student come to me and say, yes, sir, I used one of your analogies in the exam. And I'm like, you're getting no marks for that, kiddo. It's to help you understand. All right. And I'm not even going to tell you what it was. It's a bit close to the bone. Not that I've not been close to the bone today. I'm like, I hope the examiner, he or she, sees the funny side and you get the mark, but I doubt it. So let's go back to the physics. For example, if you're in the UK, mains voltage is roughly 240 volts. It's slightly less than that, I think, from what I remember, but it's roughly this. So let's say you've got a drill that's got a power of 1,000 watts. Well, 250 times 4 gives me 1,000. 100 times 10 gives me 1,000. And 500 times 2 gives me 1,000. Now, the point is, for most countries, that's unrealistic, you know, in terms of what we get in our home. But look at this. If I can make the voltage big and the current small, I still have the same power. The power is exactly the same. But what will happen is, because there's less current, there is less energy lost due to heat. So what you're going to learn next lesson is about step-up transformers and step-down. Not Optimus Prime and Megatron and, you know, all right? It's not, what's her name, Megan Fox and all that kind of stuff. When we talk about transformers, we're basically talking about something that will make the voltage really, really big and the current very, very small. And when the time is right, make the current bigger and the voltage smaller when it gets near us. All right. Why do we do that? So by the time it goes from the power station to us, there is very little energy loss. Why is that a good thing? It means more houses get more energy. You know, they're not wasting it. Okay, remember the analogy with the bucket. Put a hole in the bucket, you're not getting me water. The bigger the hole, the less water I'm going to get. The smaller the hole, the better it is. So this is a nice premise to next lessons to transformers. But I want you to understand why we're going to do this, why transformers are going to come about. It's because we are going to make the voltage really big deliberately and make the current very small deliberately so we don't have a huge heating effect. And then we switch it when the time is right, because most of our appliances need more current than they do voltage. For me, Pugs, this is an apt place to kind of, you know, put an end to today's lesson so that we can get into transformers next lesson, and I hope even motors next lesson.
Yeah, we'll let's wrap it up for today. Thank you, Kaleem, for the wonderful lesson with a lot of visualizations. We'll catch you guys on Tuesday. We'll sort of go through power loss again a bit, and then we'll go for transformers and motors. All right, cool, guys. See you all on Tuesday, and stay updated. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon. See you guys. Thank you.